According to classical sources, the ancient Celts were animists. They honored the forces of nature, saw the world as inhabited by many spirits, and saw the divine manifesting in aspects of the natural world. Overview: the sacred land. The Celts of the ancient world believed that many spirits and divine beings inhabited the world around them, and that humans could establish a rapport with these beings. The archaeological and the literary record indicate that ritual-practicing Celtic societies lacked a clear distinction between the sacred and profane rituals. Offerings and correct behavior maintained a balance between gods, spirits and humans, and harnessed supernatural forces for the benefit of the community. The pagan Celts perceived the presence of the supernatural as integral to, and interwoven with, the material world. Every mountain, river, spring, marsh, tree and rocky outcrop was inspirited. While the polytheistic cultures of ancient Greece and Rome revolved around urban life, ancient Celtic society was predominantly rural. The close link with the natural world is reflected in what we know of the religious systems of Celtic Europe during the late 1st millennium BCE and early 1st millennium CE. As in many polytheistic systems, the local spirits honored were those of both the wild and cultivated landscapes and their inhabitants. As Anne Ross observed, god types, as opposed to individual universal Gaulish deities, are to be looked for as an important feature of the religion of the Gauls, and the evidence of epigraphy strongly supports this conclusion, as what some may consider spirits were considered by other authors to be deities. The list of Celtic deities derived from local inscriptions can at times be rather long. The ancient Celts venerated the spirits who inhabited local mountains, forests and springs. Certain animals were seen as messengers of the spirits or gods. In tribal territories, the ground and waters which received the dead were imbued with sanctity and revered by their living relatives. Sanctuaries were sacred spaces separated from the ordinary world, often in natural locations such as springs, sacred groves or lakes. Many topographical features were honored as the abodes of powerful spirits or deities, with geographical features named for tutelary deities. Offerings of jewelry, weapons or foodstuffs were placed in offering pits and bodies of water dedicated to these beings. These offerings linked the donor to the place and spirits in a concrete way, honoring the waters. The spirits of watery places were honored as givers of life and as links between the physical realm and the other world. Sequana, for example, seems to have embodied the river Seine at its spring source, and Sulis appears to have been one and the same as the hot spring at Bath, Somerset, not simply its guardian or possessor. In Ireland, the tutelary goddesses Boann and Cyannan give their names to the rivers Boyne and Shannon, and the tales of these goddesses are the origin stories of the rivers themselves. The threefold goddess Briad is associated with a number of holy wells, and the Morrigan is connected with the river Eunice. There is abundant evidence for the veneration of water by the Celts and indeed by their Bronze Age forebears. In the pre-Roman Iron Age, lakes, rivers, springs and bogs received special offerings of metalwork, wooden objects, animals and, occasionally, of human beings. By the Roman period, the names of some water deities were recorded on inscriptions or were included in contemporary texts. The ancient name for the river Marne was Matrona, Great Mother, the Seine was Sequana, the Severn, Sabrina, the Wharf, Verbia, the Saone, Sucona, and there are countless others. Natural springs were foci for healing cults. Sulis was prayed to as a healer at Aqua Sulis, and the goddess Anmisha was hailed as a healer at Aqua Anmishae. Nemesis, for example, was not only the Gallic name for the town of Nîmes but also that of its presiding spring god. He had a set of 3 female counterparts, the Nemeusaki. In the same region, the town of Glanum possessed a god called Glanis. An altar from a sacred spring is inscribed to Glanus and the Glanisi, spirits of the weather and the skies. Meteorological patterns and phenomena, especially wind, rain and thunder, were acknowledged as inspirited and propitiated. Inscribed dedications and iconography in the Roman period show that these spirits were personifications of natural forces. Tyrannus's name indicates not that he was the god of thunder, but that he actually was thunder. Archaeological evidence suggests that the thunder was perceived as especially potent. Inscriptions to Tyrannus the Thunderer have been found in Britain, Gaul, Germany and the former Yugoslavia, and the Roman poet Lucan mentions him as a savage god who demanded human sacrifice. In the insular Celtic lands, Lugh is seen as a god of the storms, as are the Caechan, Scottish storm hags, and the Caech herself, who brings the first winter snows to the land by washing her great plaid in the whirlpool of Corry Briacane. This process is said to take 3 days, during which the roar of the coming tempest is heard as far away as 20 miles inland. When she is finished, her plaid is pure white and snow covers the land. From the early Bronze Age, people in much of temperate Europe used the spoked wheel to represent Tyrannus. The Romans imported their own celestial god, Jupiter, to continental Celtic lands by Interpretatio Romana, and his imagery was merged with that of a native deity to produce a hybrid sky deity who resembled the Roman god but who had additional solar attributes. Altars decorated with wheels were set up by Roman soldiers stationed at Hadrian's Wall, and also by supplicants in Cologne and Nîmes. Sacred trees. The Celts believed that trees had spirits and revered certain trees. The most sacred trees of Ireland were the bile trees, old, sacred trees that stood in a central area and were often the social and ceremonial meeting place for a tribe or village. According to the Dyn census, the 5 sacred biles of Ireland were the ash of Tortu, the bole of Ross, the oak of Muna, and the ash of Dathie. These trees were associated with the 5 Irish provinces then in existence. Animal omens. Among both the continental and insular Celts, the behavior of certain animals and birds were observed for omens, and certain spirits were closely associated with particular animals. The names of Artio, the Ursine goddess, and Epona, the equine goddess, are based on Celtic words for bear and horse, respectively. In Ireland, the Morrigan is associated with crows, wolves and horses, among other creatures. And in Scotland, bride's animals include snakes and cattle. Certain creatures were observed to have particular physical and mental qualities and characteristics, and distinctive patterns of behavior. An animal like a stag or horse could be admired for its beauty, speed or virility. Dogs were seen to be keen-scented, good at hunting, guarding and healing themselves. Snakes were seen to be emblematic of long life, being able to shed their skin and renew themselves. Deer suggest cycles of growth. In Ireland they are sacred to the goddess Flidais, while in Scotland they are guarded by the Caech. Beavers were seen to be skillful workers in wood. Thus admiration and acknowledgement for a beast's essential nature led easily to reverence of those qualities and abilities which humans did not possess at all or possessed only partially. The hunt. The animal elements in half-human, antler deities suggest that the forest and its denizens possessed a numinous quality as well as an economic value. Hunter gods were venerated among the continental Celts, and they often seem to have had an ambivalent role as protector both of the hunter and the prey, not unlike the functions of Diana and Artemis in classical mythology. From Gaul, the armed deer hunter depicted on an image from the Temple of Ladornan in the Vosges lays his hands in benediction on the antlers of his stag companion. The hunter god from Latogat in Gersh carries a hare tenderly in his arms. Arduina, the eponymous boar goddess of the Ardennes, rides her ferocious quarry, knife in hand, whilst the boar god of Euphanus in the Haute-Marne is portrayed with the motif of a boar with bristles erect, striding along his torso, which implies conflation between the human-animal perception of divinity. Arwen of Welsh mythology may represent the remnants of a similar hunter god of the forests of Dyfed. Additionally, in Welsh mythology, the hunting of a sacred stag often leads the hunters into the other world. As with many traditional societies, the hunt was probably hedged about with prohibitions and rituals. The Greek author Arrian, writing in the 2nd century CE, said that the Celts never went hunting without the gods' blessing, and that they made payment of domestic animals to the supernatural powers in reparation for their theft of wild creatures from the landscape. Hunting itself may have been perceived as a symbolic, as well as practical, activity in which the spilling of blood led not only to the death of the beast but also to the earth's nourishment and replenishment.